Hi there. Thanks for joining. I'm Erin Barnett. I'm a child psychologist with the Dartmouth Trauma Interventions Research Center, and I'm going to be talking for, I think, about a half hour about a really popular topic. A lot of people we work with who are serving children and families really want to know how to keep kids and their parents or family members calm, how to de-escalate situations where kids and families have really big feelings or getting angry, getting out of control, and in general, how to regulate and help kids regulate and cope with their feelings. So, we're going to spend some time on it. At its most basic principle, when people are escalated, it's often driven by a sense of feeling or being out of control or feeling like they don't have control over their environment or over their situation. So perhaps the best principle to keep in mind is to try to give people back control in ways that are healthy and appropriate. So we're not going to give a 3-year-old full control over the situation, of course, but we're going to try to find ways to help kids and their family members feel a sense of control over themselves, their bodies, the decisions, the environment. So some simple things to remember. At our instinctual level, when we feel threatened, even if there's not an actual threat to physical harm, okay? So even if there's no obvious threat, when people feel out of sorts, out of control, they still want to be able to fight, flight, or freeze in some situations. And fleeing is a common one. So you don't want to block any corners or any escape routes, You want people to be able to see where they could get away, where they could run if they needed to. So we don't corner people. We don't corner children who are stressed. We don't corner adults who are stressed. This is hard in some settings like elementary schools, where sometimes the critical assessment team, or they have different names, critical incident team, do sort of gradually do some cornering and some blocking of doors. And I think we do the best we can, if we've been trained in those ways, to make that lot not intimidating and not looking in any way like there's going to be physical harm that is associated with that blocking. And if there are ways that one can calm and soothe and de-escalate a situation without blocking doors, that would probably be a better alternative. So try not to block people's escapes. Try not to corner people. Another good idea is to keep your posture open. So not intimidating, physically threatening, puffing up posture, but posture that shows where your hands are and that you don't have anything hidden, you don't have any weapons, you don't have your hands in a fist, right? So open hands, open arms, not waving around, flailing, trying to be big, but just open presence. And so people don't think you're trying to hide something. We want to give children and adults space. Nobody wants to be crowded when they're mad or scared or super sad. So if someone's really escalated, we want to give at least 2 arms length of space when we are approaching or talking. And another way to help transfer control and power back to the person is to ask them what they need. So what would be helpful to help you feel calm? What would make you feel safe right now? Putting it back into their corner, giving them a sense of controlling the situation as much as we can. If they're super unsafe, we have to act, of course, but while we're doing it, or once they start to show signs that they can listen, sort of asking them what would work, what's helpful, what would make them feel safe. Another great question, especially for the kids who sort of freeze or who get into a ball or who climb under desks and go under blankets. those behaviors are a way of trying to put containment on their feelings often, right? They feel out of control. They feel like they can't control their emotions and they've lost control of that. And often they'll go into a corner or a small space to provide sort of a proxy of containment for them. So one question I love asking kids in this situation is, can you give me some sort of sign when you're feeling safer, when you're feeling better? Maybe I'll come a little closer. I'll bring mom or dad, whoever's there. We'll come a little bit closer once you give us a sign that you're feeling better or safer, and maybe we can help you feel even safer and calmer. And so I have this story that I like to share of a child who often when they're really scared or mad, they don't have their verbal capacities. So I'll say, lift your hand or lift up a finger, which is a little bit of a dangerous one, to give us a sign that you're feeling a little better and we can come a little closer. And, the child just sort of reached his hand out from under my desk where he was hiding and just sort of lifted his hand. And then I was able to bring in that scenario. It was a foster mom. Okay, foster mom and I are going to inch a little bit closer because we want to be here for you when you're ready for help and when you're ready to be comforted. So we're going to come a little closer. And examples like that, where they can be in control of their environment and how the people are around them. Again, this is not limitless. We're not giving limitless control to people, but small ways, especially where kids can feel they have a little bit of say. If there's any phrase or saying you remember from this talk, it would be this one, low and slow. This comes from Teresa Bullock's work, actually, with people with autism. And it's a great rule of thumb. So low and slow refer to two different activities, our voice and our body movements. So low, meaning a low volume, so don't yell at people. Keep your volume clear, and a lower tone also. So when I speak up like this stresses people out. So if we keep a lower volume and a lower tone, that is a more soothing, calm voice. And we want to keep a low posture for our body. One great thing to keep in mind is you don't want to be higher, on that plane than the person you're speaking with, the person who's feeling stressed or sad or scared or mad. So lower your posture if you feel comfortable with it. I often sit on the ground with kids who are stressed out because they're smaller than me and I don't want to do any kind of towering. I don't want to give off any, these are unconscious physical cues of threat or dominance. And if you can lower your eye level to meet them or get even lower than them, it is a instant cue to them that you don't want to hurt them, that you're not looking to overpower them. Your own trauma and your own triggers may not allow this to be safe for you, and that is also okay. You have to feel safe in the room. You have to feel good about what you're doing. I happen to usually work with little kids, and therefore I do feel safe getting on the floor lower than, a small child for that example. But in every single context, I may not feel safe, sitting down and being sort of vulnerable in that way. When I sit in a chair on the floor, I also keeping that body open posture in mind, not hiding anything, not having my hands behind my back. And then I fight my instincts to be sort of tense and, rigid. And I force myself to kind of relax my posture and maybe even lean back. And again, these are giving quick, unconscious cues to the other person that I'm relaxed, I mean no harm. And those body cues work way better and way faster than anything I could say. Because processing verbal words is not a priority when someone feels threatened. Again, we are not actually threatening them, but there's something that's happened where they feel threatened, they're triggered, they're activated. Their stress response system is pumping all those hormones through them and chemicals through them. So slow refers again to voice and body. So slow down the pace of your speech because they cannot process as much when under stress. If I were to speak rapid and fast, they wouldn't understand what I was doing anyway, and it would just stress them out. So we're slowing our speech and we're slowing our body movements, again, for the purpose of sending, really quick unconscious cues to the other person that we're not there to fight. We want to slow down our hands. If we're walking towards them, slow down our pace. Give them time to process what's happening. Name it to tame it is another super cool phrase to remember. And name it, the it is our emotions. To tame it, the it is our emotions. This comes from Dan Siegel, who has a number of really cool YouTube videos, books. He's been amazing in teaching us how to understand traumatized kids and work with them more effectively. So there's this cool phenomenon that happens when we're able to name our feelings, that it separates the feeling, it sort of externalizes it, and it separates it from ourselves. So I feel angry, sort of just unconsciously helps us realize that the anger is separate from us. It doesn't define us. And in some ways, it often gives us a sense of control. And so we know from those people who study language and cognition that language does so much for us as humans, including giving us a sense of control over what we're talking about and naming. It also helps us understand and process what's happened to us. So naming something for people, helping them learn how to name it is really important. So you can say to a child or to anybody, I see you're angry, I can see you're hurt, I can see you're in pain, whatever it might be. Gives them, models to them the language, the words, and helps them separate from it. And so people always say, well, I don't want to guess the wrong feeling. I don't want to be invalidating. I don't want to say, it looks like you're sad and then they're not. But this is such a powerful tool that I often advise to do it anyway, even if you're not completely certain, but use your gut, use your instinct. You probably have a good feeling of how someone else is feeling. If you're a helper, you're a caregiver, you're in this field, you probably have good instincts. And if you're wrong, they'll tell you, and they may still appreciate that you tried to empathize and, understand what they're feeling. If you're really uncomfortable naming someone else's feelings, you could name your own. Again, it's modeling that this is okay stuff to talk about. So I might say, I'm worried about you. I'm feeling sad that you're hurting yourself, or you feel so scared, just to practice those feelings. Then the harder part is to stay with the feeling if it's appropriate. So if it's anger, if it's scared, don't try to fix it. Oh, it's so hard. I know it's so hard. But there's no sense in trying to fix it. Just sit with them in their feeling. You can say things like, this is hard. I can see you're really angry. This is really hard. I'll stay with you through this. We'll get through this. So I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm not trying to point out the good things in their life. I might say something like, I'm here to keep you safe. We're safe here. I might say something like that to a kid who's really dysregulated or a grown-up, but I'm not trying to change their feeling right away. Maybe eventually, but usually it's more effective to stay with the feeling. And I'm going to talk about an inside-out clip in a second. Regulate over educate. Someone in one of the trainings I gave came up with this saying, and it's lovely. We often want, as the grown-ups, to teach kids. We want to teach them about why things happened, what led up to their emotions, what to do differently, and they just hate it. And they can't do it until they're regulated. So, regulate first. When someone is dysregulated in crisis, perceives threat, we know that the brain and the body are pumping stress hormones. They're activating their most primal regions of their brain for survival. That, the threat response, the fight, freeze, flee. They're not going to listen anyway if we try to teach them in this moment. So we know from studies of healthy adults that it takes 20 to 30 minutes after a perceived threat or a crisis. Like imagine you're driving down the highway and you almost hit a deer, right? And it's like instant physical response, sweating, heart pounding, brain pounding. Even after a minute, you might look calm, but you are still feeling that for a good 20 minutes and completely preoccupied. So our thinking brain doesn't really come back online until our physical bodies have calmed all the way. So you got to wait. So you might wait till the next day. You might wait till later that day. I know that's hard in a lot of settings. I know it's so hard. But your job in that first half hour is just to regulate the kid. So you're validating, you're staying near, you're low and slow, you're maybe naming their feelings, and you're providing empathy. Again, this is so much harder to do than to say, especially in childcare and education settings when you don't have the staffing, you don't have the time, you don't have the space. So I understand this is best case scenario. So we'll do the best we can. Wait to talk through the problem. There is a time to come back to this and talk through the problem, talk through the thoughts and feelings that led to the behavior, talk through different responses the child could have had, and talk through consequences. They need consequences, but it's not in that moment. So while you're waiting for the body to calm down, regulate. So this is a clip from Inside Out I promised I would talk about a little bit. It's my favorite. If you have not seen it, I can't show it through this webinar. Please Google it. Sadness Comforts Bing Bong from Inside Out. And it just provides a great example of being with and sitting with on how to validate people when they have hard feelings. So in the clip, Bing Bong, who's the pink elephant, loses a special toy that he had with his friend. And it's a really big deal. And he's very sad. And he actually weeps out candy pieces, which is funny. And one of the characters, Joy, rushes in and, "It's okay, you'll be okay. Let's go find so-and-so. Let's go find the train. We'll make it better. Here comes the tickle monster." So doing all of these actions to change his feeling. And you can sort of see at best, he's just ignoring her. And at worst, it's invalidating. And then this blue character named Sadness comes by and just sits down next to Bing Bong and says, "This is really sad. You must have really liked that toy and you have all these memories of using that toy with your friend. This is really hard. This is sad." And just sits there with it. And within, some moments or a minute, Bing Bong hugs her and then says, "I feel better now. We can go." The point being that sitting with the hard feeling instead of fixing it, which is usually our instinct, actually works faster and better and is much more validating and helps the person grow emotionally than trying to rescue and fix. Part of that is also just being with. So humans are social creatures. Humans are empathic creatures. We thrive off of each other and connection. So connection over isolation is another important saying to remember. I'm here with you. We will get through this. I'd like to stay with you and make sure you are safe. Language matters. When I say we will get through this, it has such a different meaning than why don't you go to the quiet room and calm down? Putting all the responsibility on the small child and not giving any connection and support. Again, I know that this is so much harder to do in practice when you've got a busy room or lots of kids or lots of families, but we're going to strive for this. So I'm here with you, making connections. They will absorb your calmness. If you stay near and you are chill, they will absorb it eventually. Another favorite clip, if you can go online and look for this. This is Brene Brown's YouTube video on empathy. And she shows very clearly what it's like when someone invalidates what you're going through or tries to find the bright side or the silver lining, when what people really want is just to be heard. They don't want you to say, at least. So she gives these examples of, my son is failing out of high school. At least your daughter is getting good grades. Nobody wants to hear that. They just want to hear, oh, that must be so stressful, right? You want what's best for your son. That must be really hard. So think about yourself when you have something troubling you. When you talk to your spouse, your friend, whoever, what are you hoping for? Are you hoping that they rescue you and point out all the good things that you have in your life and at least you? No, you are looking for just someone to listen and someone to empathize. So similarly, when a child comes to you in distress, what do? All right, our instincts are often to fix, fix, fix. But is that what they're looking for? Probably not. They want someone to sit with them, connect with them, listen, help them feel comforted, help them feel validated. If they want advice, they'll ask for advice, right? If they want you to point out the good things that they have, let them ask for it instead of you offering it right away. So obviously we have a lot of behavior issues that come up when children and people are stressed and angry, including aggressive ones, running away, a whole bunch of troubling things. At our core, we want to increase the level of support and encouragement given to a child who's had trauma, who is experiencing these triggers, these emotional outbursts. That might be a one-on-one. Ideally, it's one that the child chooses and that the child really likes and connects to. Again, it's all about that connection. So if there is a para or a special worker that the child feels connected to, that's the best person to work with the child one-on-one. Now, we don't want to burn out team members, staff members. So there's also a place for tag teaming and having a couple different people, but keeping in mind that usually supports for young children are proxy attachment figures. They are important to be regulating the kid just by their presence. So we want the child to like them. Again, we can designate an adult to provide additional support, like I was just saying. So this does not mean that the child gets to control everything. We do set clear, warm, and firm limits that have logical consequences. It's not that we don't give consequences. We have to make sure we're asking ourselves, is this a logical one, a natural one that helps the child learn, or are we just punishing for punishment's sake? And we need to remember to regulate the child first before we introduce the consequence. Always stay caring. We want to set up systems where we reinforce a wanted behavior. All of our behavioral literature shows that it's more effective to reward and reinforce wanted behaviors than to punish unwanted behaviors. We have this in so many studies. The good news is every unwanted behavior has an opposite that we want. So our job is to train our brains to praise the opposite, we call it, reinforce the opposite. So an unwanted behavior might be aggressive behavior. The opposite is gentle behavior. So we might think of gentle hands, gentle feet, safe hands, safe body, as something that we would reward and reinforce. Running around when they're supposed to be walking or sitting or standing. So the opposite behavior is staying near the staff, the team member, staying near mom, holding mom's hand while you're near the street. There's always an opposite. And again, for those opposites, that's what we're going to reinforce. That's where we're going to put our attention. Interrupting, talking too loud, talking too much. Opposite behavior is waiting to speak, waiting your turn, not over talking over people. So we try not to say a not in the opposite behavior, and I just did it. So I guess it would be waiting, waiting for a pause in the conversation before one talks. Giving other people chances to talk would be opposite behaviors. And screaming, yelling, opposite behavior is indoor voice. And so for all of these, we want specific reinforcements, specific labeled praise. And so not just good job, good boy, good girl, but I really like it when you use your indoor voice. I am so proud of you for having safe hands all day today. It's amazing. Wow, look at you. You stood close to mom while you crossed the road and you held her hand. That's so great. So see how I'm specifically telling the child what I've done. Managing triggers. First, you have to try your best to identify them, which is hard for kids who can't share that verbally with us. But there are some really common ones. So cues in the environment, either over or understimulating environments. We often think of overstimulating environments like lunchrooms, gymnasiums, busy, crowded places that are too much stimuli. But there are plenty of kids and adults who are also understimulated and not used to quiet, not used to calm. It's unfamiliar. So sometimes they will create noise, they will create chaos, they will create problems because actually the loud or the yelling or whatnot is more familiar and a little more comfortable. Surprises are hard for lots of kids who have experienced trauma. So warn children the best you can when things are going to occur that are out of the ordinary. Fire drills, substitute teachers, etc. Try to maintain usual routines. And people in early childhood settings are the masters at this. You all are so good at this. So visual schedules, similar schedules each day so the person has predictability. And again, try to give children choices and control whenever you can. So they don't deserve control in all situations, and actually they don't like having too much control sometimes. But we also dominate them so much and make so many decisions for them that they might appreciate, do you want to wear your tennis shoes or your boots? Do you want to put on your socks before or after you brush your teeth? Little things like that they might really like. Okay. Understand at our core that children cope sometimes by reenacting trauma through their interactions with others. So they want to redo, they want to rework through it so they can process what's happened, they can make sense of it, they can master it. And so they will sometimes, not always, sometimes they will bring about the situations that scare them, that remind them, that reenact their trauma in an effort either to try to gain some control over it, or sometimes because that's what's familiar, and familiar is comfortable. And so in these moments, as the grown-ups, as the helpers, we often don't see it in the moment, and that's okay. But maybe afterwards, when we're thinking about it, we're talking about it with our colleagues, oh, that's what happened. He or she was sort of setting it up again, reenacting it, trying to get loud, yelling chaos, or showing us sort of what happened. And then you can sort of think through how you would interact in a helpful way. And remember this saying that humans choose the familiar of misery over the unfamiliar. That's how much we like predictable familiarity, that we would almost choose sometimes something that's miserable as long as it's familiar, over something unknown. And lastly, remind yourself it's not personal. Oh my goodness, it is so not personal. This child, this mother, this father, they did not wake up in the morning intending to give you a hard time. That's not their goal in life. They didn't wake up and say, I'm going to give so-and-so a hard time today. It's just not true. They are carrying burdens, and they have suitcases and luggage full of insecurities and being dominated, being hurt, being put down. And that's what's coming forward, are their adaptations to that sort of those difficult circumstances. It's not personal. Sometimes I tell people, remove yourself, insert any other helper, caregiver, provider, and the same things would happen often. It's really not personal. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for all that you already do for children and families in our community, and I really hope you've learned something. Good luck.